welcome to the Raj and Drew Show for entrepreneurs. And we are ready to go talking about entrepreneurship, the stages of growth, and how emotional intelligence plays a part in each stage that your company is in. As you grow your business, as you grow this organization, there are different stages that you go through, and we've lined out the first 4 stages, and now we're in stage 5. Stage 5 is the integration stage, and we've got between 58 to 95 employees at this point. So maybe you're listening to this podcast right now and you fall into that category where you have somewhere between 58 to 95 employees. I want you to get your pen and paper ready, because Raj is about to share some entrepreneurship gold here in a minute. Are you ready, Raj?
Yes, I am, Drew. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to, as we do in every one of these in this series, I talk about the emotional intelligence competencies that you'll need throughout this stage. And we got to remember, hey, we're talking about 5 competencies tonight. And I thought, you know what? I don't want any listeners to get overwhelmed. But you got to remember, we're talking about one stage, but this stage could last a few years. Growing an organization from 58 employees to 95 could take a year, 5 years, 10 years. You know, it's all just dependent upon your industry and a lot of different factors. But if you learn these competencies, it's going to be a smoother trip along the way, and it's going to be faster, I would imagine. Is that true, Raj?
Yes, very, very faster, because you have systems in place, processes in place, and the leadership in place to make it happen.
Definitely. And we talked a lot about processes in stage 4. You definitely want to get those processes in place in stage 4. I know of companies that are right in the middle of that stage, and they're struggling because they just refuse to create processes. You know, every single company in every industry will tell you, I'm sure you've experienced this, Raj. They'll tell you, you know what? You can't really create processes in our industry. We're in a niche business. You can't really create processes. Have you ever heard that, Raj?
Oh my God, every single time. Every single time.
Absolutely. It's a fight, but I'm telling you, if you do this just from working from a consulting, coaching perspective with organizations, the ones that focus on the processes when they're in that stage 4 of growth, it's so much smoother all the way through as they grow and grow and grow and continue to have more employees. But let me jump into these competencies real quick. So there's 5 competencies that we need to focus in on during this stage, and they are emotional self-awareness, achievement orientation, teamwork, conflict management, and influence. And I want to go ahead and read the definitions of those real quick so we're all on the same page. So emotional self-awareness is recognizing and understanding your own emotions. Just knowing, why do you feel the way you feel when you feel it, right? Why do you think the way you think when you think it? And if you can drill down on that and really understand yourself, you're going to be able to process that information, and you're going to be able to respond instead of just react to the different challenges. Next, we've got achievement orientation, and that's going to be striving for personal and professional improvement. And this is really going to play a part when we talk about execution. And I'm excited about that. I did a teaching on execution last week, Raj, and so it's top of mind for me.
Excellent.
Next, we have teamwork, and teamwork is working effectively with others to achieve common goals. Pretty self-explanatory. The other competency, emotional intelligence competency, is influence. So that's persuading and impacting others effectively. And then the final one is conflict management, and that's resolving disagreements and conflicts in a constructive manner. That's kind of my sweet spot. I get called in all the time to help people work through their conflicts, right? And give them some tips and techniques to do so. And so let's jump right in and talk about integrating management into interdependent execution. This is a highlight that you have under the integration phase. So really, I'd love to know, how do you integrate management into an interdependent execution focused leadership team? That's a mouthful right there.
Exactly.
How do you go about I mean, we want to have an execution focused leadership team. That's what I was teaching about all last week. But kind of break that down. What is the interdependent side of that, and how do your emotional intelligence competencies play a part?
So the first thing you want to go back and think about stage 4. What was stage 4? It was a transition of the organization from the entrepreneur focused to a professional organization, to the organization focused. That is
Okay.
what the bridge professional. In order for us to do that, one of the biggest part of stage 4 was bringing in a lot of people who have been there, done that, experienced people to bring in their knowledge into the organization. So now in stage 5, you have what we have is approximately 11 to 15 managers.
Okay.
To manage this 95 employees, we need the managers. You have 4 or 5 senior leaders or executives. So some of them have grown in the business, stage 1, 2, 3, and some of them come from the outside. And that is the reason why the integration work comes.
Okay.
The second piece of it is now you need the specialized knowledge. If you look at sales, earlier, the CEO or the entrepreneur was wearing a hat and they were helping here with 1 or 2 salespeople. But now you have a complete sales function. You have a complete marketing function. You have a complete operations delivery. Depending on what business you are, at the minimum, you have between 5 to 7 departments which are running the organization. So each one of them are specialized in who they are and what they do.
Okay.
But that is what the leader of the business has to do is everybody has to be good at what they do, but they need to be integrated as well.
Yeah.
If you look at it, one of the biggest requirements for this is creating a 1-year strategy plan, creating some budgets, and that is what it is. So when you go back and talk about it, everybody should be focused on what they need to deliver, but that should be in sync with every other department so that the whole is larger than the individual parts.
Yeah, that's good. We used to call that, I had one COO I worked for, and he said, you know, we can be a circus or we can be a cruise ship. And a circus has a lot of different things going on, and they don't seem to work together. You got clowns over here in the car, you got the tiger over there, you've got elephants walking around, you've got a guy in a little ball doing circles in a motorcycle, and they're all just kind of doing their own thing, and different things are grabbing your attention at different times. Whereas a cruise ship, there is a lot going on, but it's all going in one direction to the destination. And so that's what I'm hearing from you. And I can definitely see how the teamwork comes into play. You're trying to get these experienced folks from the outside and the homegrown folks to work together. There's going to be conflict there. So you need those conflict management skills. And then you're going to have to persuade everybody around that common vision and common goal. That's awesome. I mean, I really see how these emotional intelligence competencies are coming into play.
Yeah. So when you talk about teamwork, I really want to bring one and highlight one very important point. Simon Sinek talks about teamwork is not about working together. It is trusting each other. And this is where the emotional intelligence is. Do I trust the other department to deliver on what they are supposed to deliver?
Yeah.
Do I trust this department does what it does? And that becomes very important. So this team has to be integrated. When I say integrated, they need to start trusting each other that it will get done.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, trust is huge in an organization. If you can't trust each other, then you're moving so slow because everybody's thinking ulterior motives. We talked about it before, but I had one organization where my brother was helping me out, and it was great because I could ask him to do anything in the organization, and he didn't think, "Why are you asking me to do that? Why are you?" You know, he never asked, clean out the toilets, sweep the floor. That's beneath me. He never said that. He just said, "Hey, Drew needs it done, so I'm going to go ahead and do it." There was trust there, and so that dynamic is huge in an organization. So when we talk about challenging and redesigning the business model to increase values, I'd like for you to unpack that. I can see how really knowing yourself or having emotional self-awareness is going to be good during that time frame, because if you're challenging or opening yourself up to allow your team to help you challenge and redesign the business, some of the things, especially up until this point, you've designed yourself, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
the people from the outside are going to go, well, this is dumb, right? Not knowing that you made it up.
But again, that is the beauty of the stage 5 is because when you say the business model, we have evolved our business model through stage 1, 2, and 3, and 4.
Yes.
One, basically, we have done that, but we don't have the proper systems for budgets. We don't have proper system for calculating our expenditures. So we have built it, and overall, the company has grown very, very well. But now you need to be very, very focused because you grew so many people, right? If you look at stage 3, basically, you had no more than 34 employees. Now you're talking about double the number of people. So you need to look at your overhead. You need to look at all of the aspects and see if we are still making money.
Yeah.
So right now I go back and I even talk to companies with 70 million, $80 million in sales, and they have single digit margins because in stage 5, they have not taken the time to redesign their business model. They have kept the same margins, gross margins, but their overhead has gone up. The number of salespeople have gone up. The number of equipment needed has gone up. Office staff has gone up.
Yeah.
And that is what it is. So when you go back and talk about your business model, you are going back and looking at it. Again, remember from the leadership piece of it, unlearn and relearn.
Yes.
This is where it comes because we have done a business model. It worked so far, but is it valid today? Is it valid today in the current structure? And that is what I'm unpacking. And the good news is when people look at it from the outside, to your point, they might go back and say it is dumb, or they might come back and say, you know what, there are unique ways of looking at it and seeing how we can add additional value to the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that is where the redesigning of the business model plays a very, very big role.
Yeah, that's good. And it, it reminds me of, this was in the nonprofit world, but a guy that I knew in the nonprofit world, he did his doctoral dissertation on kind of the life cycle of a nonprofit. And he found that there was a 15-year bell curve on these nonprofits. And so you'd have kind of this slow start and then an increase. And the peak of the curve was around 7 years or so, 7.5, and then you'd go back down. That was the life cycle, unless at the top of the bell curve, you reinvented yourself.
Exactly.
And so I could even see at 58 to 95 employees, you could be in that 7-year time frame. You could be 7 years into this organization. And while it's not perfect, this is a nonprofit illustration, but I think that principle rings true, that we as organizations need to constantly be thinking about how do we need to reinvent, looking at the market, the current market, right? We talk about it being a VUCA market, right? It's very volatile. Yes. We're uncertain with what's going on. There's constant change all around us. And it's ambiguous, right? So when we think about those factors, we've got to say, hey, maybe it's every 3.5 years. An organization in this environment needs to say, what are the market conditions that we didn't see? And we've just kind of been operating. We've been kind of doing the same thing. And we don't want to get caught, slipping and totally miss opportunity in the market so that we can be more profitable. We got to change with the changing times.
Yes. And even from my GE days, just to add to the same nonprofit model, we go back and say, have you changed your curve, the graph? Because that's the normal curve, right? So you go back and say, even as an individual in leadership positions, one of the things they teach is, did you change your curve? If not, you're going to decline. And that is the biggest piece of it. And that's the reason why when you go back and talk about strategic planning, we look at the 1 year and then we slowly start bringing the 3-year planning as well, because we want to really look at it from a near term, what is happening and how do we go back and redesign the business model.
Yeah, so jump into that. So when you talk about a 1-year operational business plan, is this the strategic roadmap that we've discussed in the past, or is that something different?
No, it's the same thing. Basically, we want to go back and say, as a business and the leadership teams and the functions, all of them are involved and say, you know what, this year we want to go back and reach X. That can be dollars, that can be market, whatever that is defined. Once the goals are established at that level, every department goes back and says, hey, this is the budget I need to make it happen. Like a salespeople, you know what? We are increasing our business by 35%. I need to go back and hire 2 more salespeople. So we'll have a sales budget around that. The marketing says, I need to bring in more leads for the salespeople to close. So I need to go back and spend X number of dollars on marketing on such an area. The HR team says, you know what? I need to recruit more people. I need this. The operation said the raw materials have gone up by 20%. So we need to go back and put that into the budget. So each one of them is putting and bringing all of the things together based on their knowledge, based on the assumptions, and based on the goals that we want to accomplish. So this is a place where you take 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, whatever it is. You do a lot of preparation upfront before the 3 days, but you're taking the 3 days to work with everybody else and make sure everybody is on the same page.
Absolutely. And you taught me how to do the strategic planning. I've had experiences doing the strategic planning with organizations, and every single time the camaraderie, the teamwork, the one vision, one focus comes together in those days that you spend together planning, getting your team involved. The days of just prescribing where we're going and what we're doing for your team, those aren't going to work at this stage. You had to do that early on because you were the solo leader. But now we're at this phase where hopefully a couple times already you've gone through this process where you brought your leaders in and they've helped you dream about what are we going to do a year from now? What are we going to do 3 years from now? What are our 5 goals or key drivers for the next 3 years? What are our key initiatives that are going to set us up for that? And then breaking it down quarter by quarter and not having more than 3 to 5 because we have the whirlwind, right? We have the day-to-day life and business that we have to do while we're also trying to achieve these goals. So it's a powerful experience. If you've never done strategic planning, I really encourage you. Raj can do it. He can help you out with it. I can do it and help you out with it. But this is something that is vital to the organization. And it gives you literally that roadmap to walk it out step by step. Everybody knows what they need to do and then how they go about doing it. And it's powerful, just even coaching small businesses and pulling that out. And every time we have a coaching session, I found that organizations, they don't say, hey, we changed our vision, or, we're no longer following that roadmap. They just forget about it.
See, Drew, to your point, basically, most of the time what happens is people want to do this. They go back, create the good charts, create a binder, a plan, whatever it is. They put it on the shelf. They don't look at it. That is the reason why we were focusing. If you look at one of the earlier session, we were talking about fast goals, right? Frequently discussed. That is where we come up. And here, one of the things I would say for people who are interested in this is try to finish your 2-day, 3-day workshop in the month of September. And the reason I say September is you get all of your ideas, you get all of your thoughts, and you have what I call the final draft, not the first draft, but the final draft. And then over the next 2 months, you can see how your last quarter is ending, how the economic terms are there. And you can pretty much by Thanksgiving fine tune that because people had time to reflect on it, think about it. And then they go back and reflect on the new goals, the new situations, the environment, whatever it is. And they can do a little bit of fine tuning on that. And then finally, between Thanksgiving and New Year, I say basically everybody should know and have their plan in place, the final one.
Yeah, that's so good. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Finish.
Yeah.
So what I was going to say, was that during that time, from an emotional intelligence standpoint, you're allowing time for the people to adopt the ideas, get accustomed to it, and adjust. You might have some major changes that are going to roll out at the first of the year. You're giving a little more runway for your team to think through and adjust and get ready for the changes that are coming in the new year.
Yes. And if you remember talking about the achievement orientation, right? When we go back and talk about achievement orientation, I talk about basically people giving basically discretionary effort, motivation to go back beyond what is required. That is the way I go back and look at it. And what you're doing here is now you brought a lot of people from inside the company. So many people from outside the company are here, and everybody is coming with a passion and saying, I want to make an impact. That is where it comes. So the more clarity around the goals, the more clarity and alignment around what each other is doing and who wants to do what, then the achievement orientation is significantly higher, and they can look at it, work on it. So the execution becomes very easy.
Yeah. Well, I'm really interested. You talk about establishing a fully integrated kind of living budget by revenue group and by department. What's a recent experience you've had with a stage 5 company where you were kind of introducing this and leading them through this process?
So basically, I'll go back and give you an example. The reason we want a budget is we want to know what we are doing and how we are doing it. So that is how fiscal responsibility is done. It doesn't mean we don't want to change, but most of the time, if we are going, and let us say the economy tanks or COVID hits or something like that comes, so immediately you go back and look at it and say, how is it affecting people? It'll affect my profitability, it'll affect my sales, it will affect my revenue. So you have actions, you can discuss about it and plan with it. And that is the reason why we call it a living budget.
Okay.
The living piece of it is we are constantly talking about it. So I was in one of the meetings 2 weeks ago. Basically, we were talking about a business and stuff, and we looked at a plan for the next 5 years. They want to really go back and look at it from a 5-year plan. And you know what is interesting? They wanted a 10x growth in 5 years. 10x.
Okay.
So they're
That's
taking
ambitious.
Very, very ambitious. And it was such a powerful discussion. And when you go talk about achievement orientation, everybody was so motivated because they got the first round of funding, what they needed to go back. And that was really opening the gates for the valuation and to get more funding very easily. And they really were very, very smart. So in the previous stage, they already built a facility to go back and create the product they want in a year. So they already have the manufacturing capabilities. What all they need is now basically the distribution and the end customer buying it. Because I've been working with them for 4 years now. So we have seen them. They grew all the way from 18 employees to their current stage. So they're just moving into stage 6 now. Last week, they moved into stage 6. But the biggest part of it is, it was a slow, like you said, the slow curve for your nonprofit. That is exactly what happened. But now the S curve is going so high. 10x growth is very easy. And
That's
that
amazing.
living budget was very important because every single was saying, do we have the money? Will we run out of money? What do we need to do? Where do we need to do the fundraising? How do we manage that? Where do we spend it? All of that comes into that fully integrated living budget. Like even I'll give you an example from my GE days. Basically, each department GE was much bigger than stage 5. But there were situations where one department need, and the manager would say, Raj, do you have any budget that I can borrow so that I can go back and work this and we used to help each other out. Because sometimes it was too difficult to go to the bosses in lab to get the new budget and approval. It was too much. But they wanted to run something and I have the budget. I would go back and say, hey, let us use this. Let us use this. And we used to always work that way.
Nice.
So like maintenance needed once about $60,000. They knew it was almost impossible to get that. But I had almost 100,000 in my budget. I went back and said, hey, let's run it through my department and we'll make it happen. And then we did it. And it was a huge benefit for the company. So sometimes it might be too bureaucratic in a larger corporation, and that is perfectly fine. But the living budgets will at least hold everybody accountable for it. So I was accountable for my budget. So I gave it to somebody else. So I had to go back and say, you know what, I can't do certain things in the next 6 months. I need to go back and manage things. But again, it was the greater good of the company and the results were accomplished. And now you go back and see how that emotional understanding between each other and the achievement orientation, execution, all of that was built into that experience.
Yeah, and that wouldn't be possible if you weren't focused on a singular goal, right? If you all weren't on the same path, moving together towards the same thing, if it was all about, hey, this is my department, I have my KPIs, and I just want to make sure I'm taken care of, you're on your own. Well, ultimately, and I've been working with an organization in manufacturing, and that is part of the challenge is different KPIs, different, really focused on their own goals. And part of this training process, we were started to get some momentum behind, we have one goal. Our client needs what we make, and we have to make sure from the engineering department to the sales department to the quality department and everything in between, all the way down to the line that makes the actual product, we have to make sure that we have one goal and we're setting up the actual manufacturing line leads up for success so that they can get the product out the door and we can get paid and we can move on to the next one. But that doesn't come naturally to people. You know?
No. See, that is the challenge, Drew. That is the challenge. That's the reason why we need to be proactive. We need to keep on thinking, what are the success factors? And that's how basically Jeff Fisher, who did all the research around the stages of growth, he spent a lot of time and energy around that and said each stage, these are some of the things that are very required.
Yeah.
Like if you continue the same growth, right? If you look at it, one of the biggest thing on this stage is basically employee development and training.
Yeah.
So one of the things they always recommend is try to come up in this stage between 3 to 5% of your total revenue towards your training budget. The reason
3 to 5%
is
of total revenue. Okay.
3 to 5%. And the reason they want that is this is where you have a lot, the old versus the new. Functional teams, departmental silos, all of those things can really go back and create a bureaucratic situation. But if you go back and help the people to learn the emotional intelligence, the required technical skills, fundamentals, foundational skills, there is a lot of combination of things that are happening at the same time.
Yeah.
And all of that requires somebody to be focused on and helping them to learn and grow. So we can do all of those things, but you don't put the budget and the training, then people will be lost and eventually the motivation wears out and everybody will be lost and everybody will be doing what they thought they need to be doing, which is the old way of doing things.
Yeah. Well, and in this stage, obviously there's rapid growth, 58 to 95 people. You're in a growth environment. You're trying to build your capacity to take on more business. And that means you're going to hire people that you don't know, right?
Exactly.
You're going to continue to hire people. If you don't invest in training them, then a couple things might happen. You'll get untrained people that stick around and aren't great and are way below what you need them to be, which in turn is going to frustrate and wear out your good people because they're going to have to pick up the slack. Your experienced people are going to pick up the slack. They're going to work extra hours. They're going to be training people themselves, and there's going to be a lot of frustration. You'll end up running off your great people. And so I can totally see how spending budget money, not just saying, hey, we're all about training internally. Great, do that. Have the processes in place to get people on board and trained, but invest to make sure that in any of these industries, you can get canned or white labeled training or send people to a training course to increase their competencies. You know, that's what we do on the more soft skills side, but there's plenty of people that do it in the hard skills or the actual technical skills that are needed for the job. And if they don't come in with the skills needed, maybe you made a bad hire. Well, you got them now. So get them trained and get them up to where they need to be so that you can have more growth. If you don't do that, you're going to be stagnated. You're not going to grow. You're going to be stuck with people working at 70% capacity because they just don't know how to move into those next skill levels. And it's a frustrating cycle for everybody involved.
Yes. And Drew, I'm going to share an example from last week.
Okay.
So basically, this was a company. Now they are in stage 5, but they have not done a lot of recruiting from the outside in stage 4. They didn't bring in the people who have been there, done that. So they have a healthy business, but now since they need to grow, they're seeing that there are certain gaps within the business. So the CEO was talking to me and he said, so just to let you know, he said, Raj, we don't have what we were supposed to do in stage 4, we didn't do that. So in lieu of that, what we want to do is basically, we want you to work with us for the next 12 months. So they gave me a 1-year contract to work with them. And I was there with them last week. And the biggest part of it we wanted to focus is they wanted to grow 50% year over year the next 3 years. Very, very ambitious, 50% growth. And for that, the first thing we need to focus on is having a functional, good sales team, right?
Yeah.
So they brought in a few resumes. We looked at all of those things. And I said, you know what? They're still mediocre at best. They do not meet the
Mm.
criteria of everything based on the job description, based on the trimetrics profile and everything else. But you know what? Interestingly, I found their person who was heading and working with their HR and a little bit of accounting, her profile was ideally fit for the sales business development role.
Oh,
When I
wow.
ran the trimetrics, I looked at it and I said, hey, this is more comfortable. And you trust this person because this person has been with your business for so long. And he said, Raj, she has never worked in sales. I said, that is not an issue. We have the potential. We have all the ingredients. Let us go back and train. So we have come up with a 100-day plan where he will be working with her. There will be some mentoring and coaching and teaching from my side. But in the next
Mm.
100 days, we just put her on a plan where she can go back and look at it, work with the owner, learn the skills, implement, learn the skills, implement. And then we said, after 100 days, you decide. If you don't want it, you go back and work in your HR department. But you know what? She is so motivated about the whole thing. She said, man, I am so excited to go back and be there. So that
That's
is a piece of
awesome.
it. Now they're investing the 2-3% in the training and everything else so that they can catch up with some of the things. So it's almost like servicing the engine while driving.
Yeah, right. Welcome to entrepreneurship, right?
Exactly. But that was a great example where they missed a few things, and that is perfectly fine. But now they're proactive about it, looking for it, they're watching for it, and you're bringing in the 3 to 5% to help bring some of the people. So now they have 100 days where they don't need to rush hiring somebody, and they can go back and find the right person in business development. And they have a
That's great.
junior person. If this lady works in sales and everything works out, they have a junior person who is supporting the HR with a little bit of coaching. She can take over the role because she has the profile very well done.
That's fantastic. That's great. And you said something that really stuck out to me when you started that conversation or that story, is that they said that they had some competencies or some of the checkpoints in stage 4 that they hadn't taken care of yet.
Yes.
And I think that's important to note. Just because you are a company of a certain size doesn't mean that you automatically get to graduate to the next level. You just are piling up all the problems that you need to address along the way. And like I've said before, I'm working with a company right now, 250 employees, never put processes in place. So they're way past stage 4, but they still have stage 4 homework that they have to do. And so you're better off taking care and doing the work in the stage that you're in, instead of letting it pile up and letting the problems grow and then become part of the culture and become deeply ingrained in the people. So this is powerful. We'll land the plane for us, Raj.
So,
Close out integration for us.
so Drew, I want to go back and share one more real example based on what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, in the stages of growth, we always go back and when we meet them for the first time, we do an assessment of where they are. So
Okay.
basically, stage 4, we have series of questions to understand where they are, and the leadership team answers the question. Then we go back and do 2 stages before that. So this was a stage 4 company. So we did 4, 3, and 2.
Okay.
And this is almost 3.5 years ago. And as soon as we got the results, the CEO went through the roof because they were operating like a stage 2 company when they are a stage 4 company with the number of employees. To your point, I just wanted to use that, reminded me of that.
Yeah.
And as soon as he saw the result, we had a long discussion, and he said to his executive team, you know what? The next 6 months, our focus is how do we go back and build everything that we need to be a stage 4 company.
That's good.
So they wanted to do it in 6 months. Then the pandemic hit and everything else. So it took them almost 18 months to get there. They did everything
Wow.
else, but because of the pandemic and stuff. And fast forward today, basically, they are a stage 5 company. And what they were doing in a quarter, they're doing on a monthly basis from revenue today.
Wow.
All 7 months of this year, they had revenue larger than the quarterly revenue in the past years.
That's fantastic.
So they took 18 months to build everything else, got some new people, got some new things, and they got themselves to a stage. And now they're just getting so much benefit out of the whole process.
So what I hear you saying is that this stuff actually works, Raj. Is that what you're telling me?
Hey, basically, I have data from over 190 companies, man. It is not just one or two companies. I have all these companies doing the assessments, looking at it, following it, and everything else. So definitely it
That
is
is,
valid.
yeah, that is so cool. I think it, it's so important that you go and you do the homework. And if you didn't do the homework, go back and do it. I mean, that's the message
Exactly.
of this for sure. Is there anything else that you want to mention about this integration phase that we haven't covered already?
The only thing I would go back and say is people to reflect. If you are an entrepreneur, you're a business owner and you have the number of employees between 58 and 95, just take some time and reflect and say, what are some of your challenges today? If they are interested, basically, we can go back and send them a very nice article on what a stage 5 company should look like. We can share some information and stuff. They can go to our website, vrt9.com, stages of growth, and they get the information there. They can go back and send an email, advisor@vrt9.com, and we will send them some information. So just taking some time, reflecting on that, and seeing what their situations are, what their challenges are, that might give back enough information about it. And if they just hear all the 4 or 5 podcasts we're doing and all the 7 stages, they will
Yeah.
get enough ideas that they can, if they're self-sufficient, perfectly fine. Utilize some of the ideas, do some research, work on it.
Yeah.
Or get the help you need from a consultant, coach, mentor, whoever you think is best for your business. But take action. That is the biggest one, I would say.
Absolutely. Take action, take action, take action. That's so good. And wow, what a great episode on integration, stage 5. I'm excited about our next episode. It's going to be stage 6. We're talking about strategic. That's the stage that you'll be in, 96 to 160 employees. If that's you, or if that's not you and you're a long ways off, come and get inspired in our next podcast as we talk about the stage 6 of growth, which is strategic, 96 to 160 employees. This has been a lot of fun. It always goes by so fast when you're sharing these stories of success that you've had with your clients as they've taken action. I think if anybody hears anything from this podcast today, it's take some action, and not just any action. Find somebody. We've got these stages of growth here. Get the document that Raj talked about, and it's a trusted system that he has worked with over 190 companies, has the research to back it up that this actually works. And the guy that created this system has all the research that he has validated and seen. So you've got to get a system that works, and then you've got to work that system and take action with it. So thank you all so much for listening to the Raj and Drew Show for entrepreneurs. It's been a blast, Raj, and we'll see you all on the next one.
Okay. Thank you, Drew. All the best, listeners. Go make it happen.